Let's turn to football here. I want to get your thoughts on what Pete Carroll had to say here. Russell Wilson is, of course, the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. Who's going to back him up? Well, there's some issues there in Seattle, and perhaps one of the quarterbacks that we've discussed here over the last couple of weeks might be there in Seattle this season. Will it be Robert Griffin III? Will it be Colin Kaepernick? Who might be the backup there in Seattle to Russell Wilson, I should say. We were just talking about Russell Westbrook. Let's hear from head coach Pete Carroll, and this was what he told a Seattle radio station about the situation.
We're looking at everybody, really. We really are. We're looking. We've been tracking everything that's going on, and we have. We've got cap and roster issues and stuff like that we're still trying to make sure that we manage properly. But just quite frankly, yes, we are looking at all those guys.
And we should note that one of the hosts on the radio station did ask him specifically and brought up the names Colin Kaepernick and Robert Griffin III. And that's why he said we're looking at all of these guys. And there seemed to be some indications that maybe one of those two guys might be headed to the Great Northwest.
Not from what I've heard. From what I've heard, Colin Kaepernick has not heard anything from any team surrounding the NFL, whether it's a starting job or whether it's a backup job. And in this case, it is a case of the fact that he is standing up for social issues, and that's it. He's got the skill to play. He's got the skill to be one of the best 96 quarterbacks in the league. If you look around the league and look at the starters and then maybe a backup or two, you add all that up. That equates to a quarterback on one of these depth charts that he is definitely better than. Several, I would say, and the fact that he's not getting the job is because a lot of his social issue, defending social issues, is gotten tied into the fact that people think that he's disrespecting the military, and I don't think the two are tied in. I think that he does respect the military, which is why when he was sitting originally for the national anthem, he discussed it with a member of the military who said, why don't you kneel if that's how you feel and you want to exert how you feel and show people to take a strong stance, and he decided to agree to that. So this is becoming more of a fact of what he is speaking out against than what his play can do on the field.
All right, and this is exactly what I said 24 hours ago, right? Who was that guy? Nate Boyer.
Right.
Who did he play for? The Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
I said what he should probably do is go get with Nate, and maybe they need to do some type of figure out what cities or teams where he might be a good fit and go there and then try to work with military in that area and show as a show of goodwill, like and have the people within that community understand who he is and understand also his stances. Seattle would be one of those places. Now, I'm not saying they've done that, but if Nate Boyer, I'm just curious, is it possible that Nate Boyer has gone to Pete Carroll and said, hey, I'll stand up for this guy. He's a good guy. He's a good guy, or he's someone who can help you out and is not what you think he is, whatever the case may be there with that organization. I wonder, but that could be a place, because the other thing, too, is getting back to what his political stance and what he's been connected to anyway, is that he has to go to, I think, a city and an organization that is like San Francisco in terms of probably a little bit more liberal-minded area, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to fly, say, maybe in Texas or in the Deep South, for example. Seattle's probably more likely where that might be more accepted.
Sure. I mean, there are organizations out there where his beliefs fit a little bit better with the organizations and with the cities. I mean, he was in Chicago speaking about social injustice, and he had Common join him, and he had a whole, seminar essentially speaking out against issues that he felt very strongly against. And so when you have that situation and you have a city like Chicago, you could have an organization like the Bears say, you know what, Colin Kaepernick could gel with how our city feels and how a lot of this organization feels, and maybe he could work with Chicago. But unfortunately, so far, from what we've heard and from what Colin Kaepernick has said, he has not heard from anyone, regardless of whether it's a starter job or a backup job in the NFL.
Well, look, we already know that the NFL doesn't want to see the faces of their franchises, especially, and almost always it's the quarterback, to be distracted. They're not going to even deal with any backup quarterbacks in that situation. They're not going to let their lead guy be that guy. So there's almost no chance in a lot of cases, in a lot of organizations, for Colin Kaepernick to hook on with so many of the teams there in the NFL. I will say this, just from a purely football standpoint, if you're having to pick or wanting to pick and trying to decide, am I going to take Colin Kaepernick or Robert Griffin III, I would go with Kaepernick just from a football standpoint. One, he knows that division. That's one thing.
Sure.
And two, I would think that from a health standpoint, Kaepernick's track record is much better than RG3's.
Right, I agree.
So if you're looking for some reliable help, backup help, it seems like Kaepernick's the guy to go. And probably is a little bit more similar to Russell Wilson and probably can run that offense closer to what Russell Wilson did as opposed to RG3.
Well, and a lot of people want to point to what Colin Kaepernick did last season and the fact that he didn't have a lot of success. He didn't have a lot of people around him, supporting him. He didn't particularly have the roster that he needed in order to be successful. And, there were a lot of issues in that team and in that franchise. To come in as a guy who's not getting the support and doesn't have a lot of the players around him to be successful, I mean, it's not all his fault. You look at the record, and a lot of people are pointing to the fact that
was a dysfunctional and remains a dysfunctional
exactly.
organization, although it has turned a little bit here with John Lynch. Looks like he's stabilized a little bit,
right.
as well as Kyle Shanahan.
And so, but people end up pointing to Colin Kaepernick as one of the reasons why there was such dysfunction there, and I think he's getting a little bit more blame than he deserves for that.